Hello, everyone. Just going to open in a quick word of prayer. God, thank you for this time that we have, even virtually, and as we're just going through this new experience for us all. I pray that you will just comfort us and that we will know you in this time. So, bless these words and may you minister to the hearts and minds of those who might hear it. In your name, amen. So, there's a joke that goes like this. A Holocaust survivor dies of old age. He goes to heaven and sees God and tells him a Holocaust joke. God looks at him and goes, "That's not very funny." And the Holocaust survivor responds, he goes, "Oh, I guess you had to be there." It's not a very funny joke, but it is one that stirs some thoughts about where God is when suffering occurs. With this joke, you can insert any global tragedy, what we are seeing today with COVID-19, or you could even insert your own personal sufferings, times of depression or familial illness, or even, as we see in this psalm, the type of suffering that comes from an unknown source, a despair that one falls into. There's no doubt that we've all been faced with times like these. The impact of suffering in our lives are normally some of the most shaping times, for better or worse. While we know that we have been in these situations and we can pretty much guarantee ourselves that it will happen again, we're always taken aback by it. I don't know if I've met anyone who is prepared for the suffering they have faced. As real as it is, we never work it into our day. It is always a surprise. Despite our past experiences, we still seldom know what to do with those times in life where it seems to be filled with suffering. And it's that prolonged suffering that begins to suck up hope. It skews our vision. All your decisions seem to be falling short. Your confidence is shaken, and you just don't see where it's all going. And no matter what you try, it's just not a time that you seem to be able to pick yourself up out of. No amount of bootstrapping is getting you out of this span whose end is not in sight. It adds weight to every one of your steps, and it keeps the warmth of the sun off your skin, and you ultimately are wondering, where is God? Have I done something wrong? I don't think I have. Well, I know I have, but is this because of that? Some of your harder times are when you experience suffering and despair when you have been listening to God, and it seems as though He has brought you into it. And you can begin to wonder if you heard Him right, if maybe you misunderstood and got it wrong, and maybe that's why you're here. And perhaps this is shaking your confidence that you can hear Him at all. Our hope interwoven in this, if we can't hear Him, or to a degree know His will, then how are we going to be guided? What kind of shepherd is that? It seems this is where we find our psalmist. They're at a point in their life where, let's say, his devotional life has run dry. The excitement is gone. Every aspect of it is joined with a weight that wasn't there before. You arrive on Sunday, not because you want to, just because you don't want to answer the question, "Oh, where were you last week?" Or maybe even worse, you fear no one will notice at all. So you show up, and lucky you, they're singing one of your favorite songs. You know all the words, and you normally sing it real loud. But today, to even mumble through it feels disingenuous. The words don't seem to make sense today, and with every word of truth the song proclaims and the sermon affirms, you are no closer to their ascent. The panting of a deer exhausted for water and unable to find any, and yet its throat is burning. The thirst is there, but every puddle a mirage, and any hope of satisfaction seems to fade with every breath. In seeking out water, you're instead given the salt of your tears as they fall over your lips, and this would be your satisfaction if it were not for the accusation that your tears themselves cry out, "Where are you, God?" Where even mourning points a finger back at you, this internal suspicion creeps into your head. Of God's reality. Much like the joke I started with, this questioning of whether or not God is present, and if he is, how could he just sit by and watch? All this mixes together. Anger creeps in to add this dissonant symphony that is playing within your thought life. It goes from inquiry, "Where are you, God?" to accusation, "Where are you?" As your questions become rhetorical, because you have no hope in actually receiving a response. But you remember those days when the presence of God was so imminent. That Sunday morning would come and you would get to church and they would be singing songs that you liked in the least, but your voice, it could be heard above all the others. And it wasn't just loud, but in your voice there was joy. And so much so that other people around you started to sing louder, and not just to drown you out, but because joy is contagious. It brings others out of their moment, and you bring them up the hill to the temple with you. But right now, you don't even want to look up. And you can't even quite put your finger on why, you just know that it's the case. As the psalmist cries out, "Hope in God," as he tries to stir up within himself some type of response, some type of doctrinal reasoning for why he should hope in God, or ought to hope in God. And as certain as he is that one day he probably will, today that just doesn't help. Hope looks forward, and in that cry is this sense of, wait it out. Keep going. Your song of praise will return. You will go back up the hill. You will not be down here forever. This will pass. God is here, and he is on the other end of this as well. Your rough times don't scare him. Your stumblings don't intimidate him. He is going to bring you through this. Even though you still don't even have a prayer. You can't quite bring yourself to that space. You don't even know if you're allowed to. You don't feel worthy. You feel not quite outside of the camp, but just on the border. So all you have are cries directed at the sky, maybe, possibly, landing on an ear, but God only knows. And where you once walked with the song of God stuck in your head, now you're just lost in your thoughts. Your ideas of God have changed from those certain praises that rolled off your tongue, confident in your standing before him. They've now turned on you. The might you once proclaimed joyously that was his has turned against you. Your godly virtues, which at one point brought you peace in your conscience, but now are revealed to you with motives that you just can't believe were yours. The water that once nourished now drowns. The calm river you sipped from are now rapids that have overcome you. The psalmist and Jonah share sentiments here. Jonah in the belly of the fish, and the psalmist in the darkness of themselves. Silence. Why doesn't he offer some consolation? You can't understand God's silence, and it just adds to the feeling that he is crushing you. You think, well, at least Jonah got a fish. I'm just drowning. But our Father is not forgotten his covenant with you. His love is the bitter medicine in the midst of turmoil, and when you sleep, he is comforting you with his songs, and those songs are creating a new prayer in your heart, one that you have yet to touch, but our Father will bring you there. He will fulfill his word in you. The pillar of fire in the desert gave a soft glow, just enough for the darkness to not consume, enough for the plummeting temperatures of the desert night to not leave you frozen in place. You will not remain here. Our story in Scripture prophesies again and again, he will bring you through. Verse 8 of this psalm is just this. For the only time in the psalm, he addresses God as Yahweh. He reminds himself that this is not just any God. It is the God who introduced himself to his people. It is the God who initiated this relationship in the first place. And it is the God who made it a covenant that is reliant upon himself. So just keep walking. I know these better days seem far off, and the sweetness promised tomorrow, it never mitigated the bitterness of today. And the questions still linger as much as you remind yourself, God still seems far away. Even worse, people around you are starting to wonder. It's no longer just private. And they heard you before it all happened talk about God and how you were seeking his will in your life, and you talked about peace and confidence and joy and hope. You maybe even offered them some hallmark Christian encouragement in their own times of despair and trial, even with the best intentions. Maybe in some of your thoughts, you linked it to the amount of faith they had when they were going through a hard time. Some of those voices are coming back around. As they ask you questions, they make recommendations, and they offer some of the same encouragements you did, you can't help but see it as pity. All you hear in their words are your own accusations, like, where is your God now? Come on, you just need more faith. Because Christians aren't supposed to feel that way, right? We're supposed to be joyous. And these words do nothing but affirm your suspicions that God has turned from you. Where is your God? Echoes in your mind. To top it all off, you have the added weight of feeling like you've done a disservice to your faith, to your God. You haven't represented him well. It's in this place that all sorts of accusatory whispers can fill your thoughts, can instill doubt, and bring before you accusation after accusation, guilt upon guilt. No wonder you're downcast. But what started this? How did I get here? As much as you search, you can't find the moment. You can't find the place. It's like we see right now with COVID. We look for patient zero. But as close as we may come, you can never quite be sure. And these times in the darkness can often send you wandering for potential lights. So many different things in this time will offer you the promise of a reprieve if you can just find out ... But then what? You find it out, and so what? Don't misinterpret these times. They have not happened to present you with a riddle to figure out. They have happened to thrust you out of yourself into the darkness, which is faith, the unknown, which insists that you cannot trust your vision. Hope is never aided by your eyes, but reaches out in the dark for God. It doesn't perfect the moment and rid it of all tragedy and despair, but it proclaims against all reason that I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. By the time we get to Psalm 43, the completion of 42, we see this movement. The psalmist isn't out of the depths yet. As far as we can tell, there's been no quantitative change in his circumstances. But something has changed. Where he once screamed at the sky, he's now beginning to unearth the prayer that was formed in him through that long night, where God in his confidence sang over him. There's little new material in this second part. And it's not the material that makes the difference, but the direction of it. That makes all the difference. This is hope. Hope is not content-based. It is directionally based. It is aimed at a sure target. So often we want to perfect the contents. And once we've done that, well, then we will worry about where it's going. But by the time we do that, we've lost all direction. Hope is about direction. The psalmist is no longer seeing the times of highest praise behind him. No, he can see himself at the temple again. He doesn't reflect back on when. He is before the altar offering his worship. This is the hope in which he has lamented through, the hope he kept reminding himself of, even when it proved ineffective time and time again. For those of you in these dark nights of the soul, St. John of the Cross would call it, I understand that much of what I say you may not be able to grasp onto now, but if I can offer any bit of light, know that God is working a new song within you. A new prayer is being carved out of your past experiences, and you will sing loud again. There is coming a day when you may still be downcast, and the turmoil might still be around and within you. But the day is coming when you know that your cries are not entering an empty sky, but you will know for reasons you cannot explain that your tears are landing before God. Your voice has found its way to his ear. And this is not just any God. This is the God. It is the God who introduced himself to his people. It is the God who initiated this relationship in the first place. And it is the God who made it a covenant that is reliant upon himself. It is our God who spread his arms in suffering and endured the cross for the hope set before him that we would be together, him and us in him. So how can we better plan for that day? St. John of the Cross says this, those who fall alone remain alone in their fall, and they value their souls little, since they entrust it to themselves alone. If you do not fear falling alone, you do presume that you will rise up alone? In other words, we are meant to be a community of faith that is joined together. Not just because we are told to, but as John of the Cross points out, that is actually a way we display love. And it's not just a love of neighbor, or brother and sister, and God, to be in community, but it is a way of loving yourself. As I said at the start, we seldom plan for these times, and they take us by storm. This is because we have the wrong working assumptions. Assume that a time such as this will come upon you, if you are not in the midst of it right now. Assume that there will be a day that is dark beyond any explanation you can offer. The church is this. In an age that is so concerned with self-care and often presents it selfishly, we are shown here what true self-care is. It is not the avoiding of these times as if we could actually do so, but is the understanding that yourself and others will face these days. If you have any love for them, for God, for yourself, let this sit with you and allow it to stir, to prepare for those days. As we see now with this virus, by the time you are in it, it is too late to begin to prepare. Prepare now. And let us lift one another, if not to our feet, lift one another to the lap of God, in which we can soak with our tears and know they are landing on not just any God, but the God. Bless you.